Well, folks, it finally happened. Tesla just opened Robotaxi to the public. Anyone in Austin or the Bay Area with an iPhone can now hop into a driverless Tesla like it's nothing. And it looks like service will start in Arizona soon, too. The implications for autonomy and for Tesla's future are enormous, though there is still a catch. Let's take a look. Before we start, a quick shout out to my channel sponsor, Joa. They make the best accessories for your Tesla and other EVs and have amazing warranties and customer service too. I use their accessories daily. Check the link in the description and get 5% off a fan-cooled phone charger, a portable tire inflator, a fold-out laptop table, and so much more. Oh, and they make perfect gifts for your EV-loving friends too. So check out the description and get 5% off, and now let's get back to it. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. About a day ago, as I record this video, Tesla opened up their Robotaxi service in Austin and in the Bay Area, the San Francisco, Silicon Valley Bay Area, to everyone with an iPhone. Unfortunately, Android folks are still a little bit out in the cold, but if you have an iPhone, you can now just sign up. And in fact, there have been people who have signed up in Canada, in New York City, in North Carolina, whatever. It doesn't matter where you are, you can now sign in and sign up, though obviously you can't get a ride unless you're in the geo-fenced area. But still, that's very, very cool. That means that number one, Tesla is very, very confident in their full self-driving. Version 14 of the software is really, really excellent. If you haven't seen my first drive videos, I will leave them up here and at the end of this video as well. And if you didn't catch my first ride in a Robotaxi that happened way back on June 22nd, I will leave that at the end of the video, and I think I'll put it in the description as well. In fact, I'll put links to all this in the description. Back in June, of course, Tesla was using version 13 of the software, but now they have upgraded the Robotaxi to be version 14, at least as far as we can tell. But anyway, they must not only have confidence in their software, but they must be increasing the number of vehicles on the road. In other words, the hardware, from the approximately 100 or 200 or so that were on the road originally this summer to on the order of 1,500 or 2,000 vehicles split between the two areas. So they obviously are much more confident. They've also figured out how to do the fleet software element of it. That is not easy to scale. Elon Musk even talked about that, I think back in maybe September or something. He said that the fleet management software is actually not trivial. Basically what Uber and Lyft figured out how to do, but Tesla had to reinvent the wheel here because they're not sharing their proprietary software, but basically having cars in the right place so that somebody who calls it up can get a ride relatively quickly, and then of course predicting where the vehicle is going to end up to drop off one passenger and pick up another one without having to drive halfway across the city to do so. That efficiency reduces wait times, reduces the amount of energy it costs Tesla to drive the car around without a passenger, without making money, and so that aspect of it is very important as well. But the most important part, of course, is having the number of vehicles on the road necessary to be able to give rides to the passengers when needed. And also, of course, having the confidence in the software that they believe that these cars can drive millions of miles without having an accident. And of course, as this Teslarati article from November 18th points out, the one catch is you still need a safety passenger in Austin, Texas. In other words, someone in the passenger seat who can quickly stop the vehicle if necessary, and of course get out and go into the driver's seat and drive the car if absolutely necessary. I don't know if I've heard of any incidents in the past couple of months where the passenger has had to get out of the vehicle and actually get in the driver's seat. If you know about something like that, definitely let me know in the comments, but I have not heard of anything like that in months. And then of course in California and San Francisco and the Bay Area, you have to have that person in the driver's seat. They're not touching the accelerator or the brake or the steering wheel, but they're sitting there so that they can take over much more quickly. So of course that's more restrictive, but that of course is California for you. So as the Teslarati article says, and of course I will leave links to this in the description as well, the platform was initially launched to those who were specifically invited to Austin to try it out, and thank you very much to Tesla for inviting me on day one. It was a really magical experience. Slowly, Tesla launched the platform to more people, hoping to expand the number of rides and get more valuable data on its performance in both regions to help local regulatory agencies relax some of the constraints that were placed on it. Additionally, Tesla had its own in-house restrictions, like the presence of safety monitors in the vehicles. However, CEO Elon Musk has maintained that these monitors were present for safety reasons specifically, but revealed the plan was to remove them by the end of the year. So that still hasn't happened. That's the catch, but hopefully that will happen by the end of the year, at least in these two markets or portions of these two markets. Now Tesla is opening up Robotaxi to anyone who wants to try it, as many people reported today that they were able to access the app and immediately fetch a ride if they were in the area. As the article continues, the launch of a more public Robotaxi network that allows anyone to access it seems to be a serious move of confidence by Tesla, and it definitely is. as it is no longer confining the service to influencers who are handpicked by the company. I don't think that that's been true for a couple of months. I've heard more and more people getting it. You requested access to the app and eventually you would get it. So people have been able to request that for months. It was definitely influencers at the beginning, but after the first several weeks, it definitely went wider and wider to the general public. But of course, you still had to request access and Tesla had to grant it to you. And then even though we haven't heard from this specifically from Tesla at this point, Elon did say this, right? In the coming weeks, we expect Tesla to then rid these vehicles of the safety monitors as Musk predicted. If it can come through on that end by the end of the year, the 6-month period where Tesla went from launching Robotaxi to enabling driverless rides is incredibly impressive. And let's remember that June 22nd is basically 6 months from the end of the year. That would be December 22nd. So if that actually happens, we're talking about launching a service on June 22nd in a small area of Austin, then expanding that area pretty radically in Austin. It's a pretty large geography right now. Then launching the Robotaxi service in the Bay Area. A very, very large portion of the Bay Area is available as well. Currently, both services still use monitors in the car, but those supposedly will disappear by the end of the year. And honestly, at that point, that's when Tesla can actually really expand the number of vehicles, because I have a feeling right now the big problem is the safety monitors. If you have to hire 1,500 safety monitors to sit in a car all day, first of all, not the greatest job in the world, but second of all, that really limits the amount of expansion you can do. That reduces the amount of scale that you can do. So if Tesla can get rid of those monitors, then all bets are off, right? They could easily expand to 2,000 or 3,000 vehicles in each of the areas, or as much as they think is necessary to be able to support the service during peak surge times and things like that. And then the vehicles can, I guess, do other things like charge and get cleaned during off-peak times. And then, of course, even though these articles don't talk about that, the fact that Tesla is able to scale up their fleet management software on the back end, that is a huge deal as well. So in other words, all of this is extremely positive for Tesla. And speaking of impressive for Tesla, here is another article that also just came out yesterday from Business Insider. Tesla gets approved to launch ride-hailing service in Arizona. So if you don't know, Waymo already has approval in Arizona, and Elon Musk even thanked Waymo for leading the way, because basically Waymo is going into each of these areas and getting permission from the state government and the local government, which really smooths the path for Tesla to be able to follow behind them and get approval more rapidly than if they had to go into these markets first. I expect that Las Vegas might come relatively soon as well, since Zoox and Waymo have already paved the way. Get it? Paved the way? All right, anyway, terrible pun. But anyway, since they've already paved the way, I expect Tesla to be able to follow relatively quickly there. So let's read a bit of this article as well. Tesla got the green light to operate a ride-hailing service in Arizona on Monday, according to the local transportation department. A spokesperson for the Arizona Department of Transportation said in an email that Tesla applied for a Transportation Network Company (TNC) permit on November 13th, which means it was granted very, very quickly. That was 5 days. This permit allows companies to operate a ride-hailing service. Quote, Tesla has met the requirements to operate as a TNC and is permitted as of November 17th, the spokesperson wrote in an email, which means that they could actually turn this service on like today if they wanted to, I guess. Tesla has already submitted a self-certification that states its plan to test autonomous vehicles in the state with safety drivers, the spokesperson said. So obviously, I think it would be ridiculous of them to try to do it without safety drivers at first. So if they start getting rid of safety drivers, my prediction is it will start in Austin first, because that has the most lax regulations, and also Tesla has been there the longest, so they will have the most data, the most amount of miles driven to show regulators that the car doesn't need a person to intervene. Now, of course, they could still have remote folks to intervene, right? They could remotely stop the car. Potentially, I believe they can remotely drive the car if they need to, so at least pull it off the road into a parking lot over to the side or something if necessary. So almost 100% they will still have people monitoring the cars, but you could easily have, say, 10 people monitoring 1,000 cars at that point, because you'll have so few interventions, and they could be sitting in a nice air-conditioned office building someplace in Austin rather than having to be out in the cars. But anyway, they could either take those people or train new people locally to be in the vehicles in Arizona as they start the testing. So if they want to, they can actually transition a lot of the workers from one market to another. As they reduce the need for safety monitors in one market and need them in another market, they could shift them around, assuming that people are willing to be mobile like that. Continuing the article, in Arizona, companies are required to file a law enforcement interaction plan that outlines, for example, protocols for emergency cases or when a vehicle is stuck on the roadway. Companies must also submit a a written statement acknowledging that they will comply with federal law. So that may reduce the amount of ability for the car to speed. But again, if you're in a taxi, especially in relatively local environments like driving on city streets and stuff, going faster than the speed limit is not as important as when you're in your personal vehicle and care a little bit more. Now, maybe the complying with the law will allow a little flexibility on that point, like maybe you can go 5 over or something like that. Anyway, interesting point. I don't know exactly how Tesla's going to deal with that, but once they actually launch in Arizona, it will be interesting to see if the cars comply strictly with the speed limit or whether they have some flexibility to go a little bit faster. Because honestly, if you're on a highway and it's 65 miles an hour, but everybody's going 75, it's actually kind of unsafe to drive the speed limit. It's more safe to drive with the flow of traffic than to be slower than the flow of traffic. So anyway, interesting little nuance there. And then, of course, we get to Elon Musk said in October that the company plans to launch Tesla Robotaxi in 8 to 10 cities by the end of 2025. So Arizona could be 3 or possibly 3 and 4, depending if they do it in 2 areas of the 8 to 10 that they plan to launch by the end of 2025. But we are, only 6 weeks or so away from the end of the year. So that would be really, really optimistic. I would be very surprised if they're able to launch it in that many, but I could see them doing maybe 5 or 6 by the end of the year. And then, interestingly enough, the app has been launched in Canada as well as the United States. Now, I don't think that actually means that Tesla is planning on launching the service in like Vancouver or Toronto or something. I think it just means that they expect that people from Canada could come to the United States and wish to get the Robotaxi service while they're in one of the geofenced areas. That would be my expectation, which means potentially they could release the app globally so people coming from England or France or China or whatever could also experience it. But at least at present, it looks like it's Canada only. And the Business Insider article says it's not immediately clear if Tesla's expansion came with an increase to its fleet size. That is a good question. We don't know, but it seems like if you're going to release it to the public and make it widely available, you probably ought to have at least a few more cars out there so there are no big wait times. So Tesla autonomy is really on a roll. Version 14 of the software is just amazing. And of course, it's being rolled out into robotaxis as well. Even though we don't have explicit confirmation, there's no way that they're not using that in their robotaxis, because it is leaps and bounds better than version 13, which was already basically good enough to drive around in these environments already. And then we have opening up the app to everyone with an iPhone in the United States and Canada. That is a big move, very, very bold move. We've got somewhere around 1,500 vehicles, about 500 in Austin and about 1,000 in the Bay Area that are driving currently, but I expect that number could easily be doubled in the next few weeks, as of course the expansion to pretty much all iPhone users means that many more people will likely be requesting Robotaxi rides very, very soon. We've got the back-end fleet management service, which seems to be working very, very well and scaling very well. We've got expansion into Arizona, which could happen basically today. It could happen tomorrow, could happen next week, could happen very, very soon. We've got Elon Musk saying that they're planning to get to 8 to 10 cities by the end of the year, which I think would put them beyond even Waymo. I don't know that Waymo has 8 or 10 cities. Maybe they do at this point, but it would put Tesla right about on par with the number of cities that Waymo is operating in. And then finally, we have the imminent removal of safety monitors in the vehicles. Like I said, I expect it to happen in Austin first and then move on to the Bay Area. But when we get rid of that, that will be the major sort of cherry on top moment for Tesla's autonomy. That means that they are so confident in the vehicles that they do not believe that monitors are necessary anymore and that remote monitors will be adequate for the vehicles. And quite honestly, driving version 14 of the software around, except for times when I feel like intervening, and of course parking garages, which they are not great at finding parking spots in, but that's not really an issue for robotaxis. That's about the only significant problem that is still there with this version of the software. And we've got version 14.2 coming in version 14.3, which Elon says feels almost sentient. So Tesla AI has not reached the headroom yet. They haven't, bumped against the ceiling of their capabilities. There's still a lot more. So these vehicles are already amazing and they're only going to get better. And it looks like Tesla is all set to aggressively expand here. And that's amazing news, not just for companies, but also for we as consumers, because these rides are cheaper than Uber and Lyft, but also the evidence is stacking up that they are safer as well. And so if you can catch a ride that is very, very inexpensive, in fact, potentially less than driving miles on your own vehicle, and at the same time safer than a human driving, that really changes the nature of transportation within cities. It means the stress of driving into a city, the stress of trying to find a parking place, the expense of paying for parking, or the expense of paying for Uber or Lyft or something like that is all all basically negated, and these vehicles will be a net huge positive for we consumers. So I, for one, think that November 18th is actually going to be a banner day in the history of Tesla, and that we will remember that date sort of like June 22nd when the first Robotaxi rides were available, as a really big moment in Tesla's history. Alrighty folks, that's what I've got for you today. Let me know in the comments what you think about all of this. While you're down there, if you don't mind liking the video, it really helps with YouTube's algorithm. And if you want to support the channel, the best way you can do that is simply to hit the subscribe button. That helps more than you can imagine. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.